The door might not be open to a woman again for a long, long time. And I have the kind of duty to other women to walk in and sit down on the chair that was offered, and so establish the right of others, long hence and far distant in geography, to sit in the high seats. I am the mayor.
I'm just closing the door so we won't be interrupted.
Okay, let me see. Okay, so I'm going to ask you. I can't even see your face.
Okay.
Is there any way to close your blinds behind you? No.
It is, but I bet if I do this.
Yeah, if you just turn around, you absolutely. Oh snap!
Look at that.
It just look how easy that is.
Technology's right when it works.
Ain't it? You are gorgeous. Good morning.
Thank you. Good morning.
I'm telling you, so grateful to your team just for responding. This is a new venture in what I've been doing media-wise. I'll tell you a little bit about myself and then like the objective of what we're trying to even do here. So my name is Jackie. I was in the military for about 11 years and I've been out for about 6. I recently kind of went on this doing what I say and saying what I mean, and ran for office. I ran for the school board I'm in Norfolk, Virginia.
Okay, I wanted to know where. So
yeah, Norfolk, Virginia. So I was very new because, being in the military, you move around so much and you don't really get to dig in. So this was the first opportunity to dig in. But what I found on the campaign trail was that people were very reticent to talk about this thing called race because my campaign manager was a European American woman. And so we had to have some really difficult conversations. And what we did was we took those difficult conversations and then we turned them into a podcast post the election. Now we learned by 24 votes, which was amazing. But the conversation has continued. So we've been doing a lot of work on, having these uncomfortable culture conversations about race.
Sure.
So during those conversations, people I've found are very curious about women that decide to get into government. And I'm infatuated with local government. I am a huge advocate of you don't understand how local is more impactful. If the mayor says tomorrow it's going to change, it's going to change in the city council. So,
right.
And I'm about women. So the media company that I started is about telling women's stories. So one of them is the May Her podcast, where we just want to talk about that map to mayor for women. What brings you there? Something is a precipice that sets you on that path to get into the political, whatever it was. Something started a fire that led you here, that led you to Gary, right? To being the mayor of Gary.
For sure.
And then we have one that is about just trauma. We just talk about trauma sort of things, but it's the whole thing of amplifying women's voices in very many facets. And I'm excited about it. I'm excited to just kind of pick your brain because you're a real human. And sometimes people forget to humanize these women that are taking you're either human or nothing else, right? And I would be remiss if I didn't say I'm originally from the Chicagoland area.
Is that right?
Yeah. My mother lived in Gary for a period of time. Her husband's actually from Gary.
Get out of here.
She lives in Maryville now. I grew up in Chicago Heights.
All right. What's your mom's name?
Audrey.
Okay. All right. How about that?
I did. I told her, when I had you on the books, I said, I'm going to be interviewing the mayor of Gary. And she was like, really? She's trying to do some good. She's done some good. I was like, really? It's good. But there's good, bad, and ugly. And so that's what we're here, is really just to tell your story and make it real, right? Make you real and demystify this thing of women leading cities, because it's possible.
It
happens every day.
Absolutely. And I hope you get a chance. There are some phenomenal women leading cities, from Karen Weaver in Flint to Keisha in Atlanta to Latoya in New Orleans to Asia in Compton. I mean, we're doing some serious work.
Yeah, big and small, right? Yeah. I've got an interview with
Rochester, New York. So you really do have to reach out to them, and they're just phenomenal.
Yes. Okay. So let's get into it, because I want to be respectful of your time. And I know you got stuff, and you're a woman in transition too, right?
I am. I am.
I saw that. I said, yes. Okay. So let's really start with you kind of telling me who you are and what your role is in your particular city and how you got there.
My name is Karen Freeman-Wilson, and I'm the mayor of Gary, Indiana.
That is awesome. Okay. So are you originally from Gary?
Yes,
Okay.
I am a Gary native. I was born there in 1960 and have lived there for a large majority of my life, with the exception of time that I've spent in Indianapolis
Mhm.
and in Washington, D.C.
And so, how would you describe being a girl of the city? How would you describe your city as a child? And then now that you are the woman leading the city?
So, as a child in Gary, it was a bustling and thriving community. It had a very thriving downtown. There were stores that lined the streets. There were other commerce areas, retail areas that were thriving. And I saw that as a child. It was a given that anything that you needed, you could purchased, you could do, you could enjoy in the city. That changed. In fact, I saw it change from really my teenage years as a high school student into my college years, so much so, and it impacted me so much that I wrote my senior honors thesis as a college student at Harvard on the economic decline of Gary, Indiana. And it was because it had such an impact on my life, on the way that I thought about the city. Not, it certainly didn't lessen my love for the city, but I thought about things that I'm sure other high school, college students didn't think about relative to their cities. And so I decided to write about it and to study it and to research it. And I'm really glad that I did.
And so it sounds like we're leading into your journey into the world of caring about cities and caring
Yeah.
about government. So how did that transition? So you said you went to Harvard
Yes.
and you wrote this thesis and it brought you to what? How did this start this? What sparked you to decide to go ahead and be a woman in government?
So it's really interesting because the spark occurred probably 11, 12 years before I wrote the thesis. I was actually 7, and I had a unique opportunity to meet Mayor Richard Gordon Hatcher as he was campaigning to be the mayor of Gary. During that time, and that was really in 1967, you had house parties. And so my parents, who weren't necessarily political operatives, if you will, but were very civic minded, they had a house party in their basement. And being an only child at the time, I did whatever they did. And so at that time, they were having a house party. I went down and listened with the rest of the adults to then candidate and council member Richard Hatcher talk about his vision for the city, how he thought that African Americans should have a opportunity to be involved in government, to be involved in commerce, to have businesses in the city. And he talked about his love for the youth and how young people should be trained to be civic citizens. And it just so happened on that day, they'd given out citizenship awards at my school. And so I had an award. I showed it to him because he was talking about it, right? And he signed it for me. And that really started my journey, to hear him talk about his love for the city, to hear him talk about his vision. I, even at 7, thought, well, I want to be a mayor too. And, it didn't occur to me that he was a guy and I was a girl. It didn't occur to me that there had never been an African American mayor at the time. I just, assumed that he was going to be the mayor because he was running to be the mayor, and that I could do the same thing.
I love it. I love it. You know, because I call my kids my citizens, and people think that's weird. But I say, you know, my two little citizens, it's because you want them to grow up and be contributing citizens. You know,
Yes.
it's beautiful. So you were already put in a mindset of being a whole person in your city where the way it works. Now you mentioned that he talked about African Americans having opportunities and being a part of the process. You know, Gary, Indiana, correct me if I'm wrong, is over 80% African American population. You can give me
Yeah.
the right numbers on that.
85%.
85% of African
Yeah.
American, and a lot of folks like to think Gary is dying. But can you talk a little bit about some of the things that you've done specifically with like Goodwill and the upcoming stuff with the Hard Rock, and things that you've done, your accomplishments to really bring Gary back to the life that you saw, or back to the way you saw it as a little girl?
So in terms of where Gary was and where it is and where it's going, we understood that we have to develop our way out of Gary's financial challenges. And so much that you see in Gary is directly related to our financial challenges. And so, to the extent that we know that we have a deficit, we know that people need services, need and want and deserve services. We understood that because of the property tax caps, which is something that was imposed upon us by the state, you can't just say, oh, the state did this and, you know, we're powerless. You have to come up with a plan. So our plan was development. And that was why I wrote a letter to Jeff Bezos about bringing HQ2 to Gary. That was why we have been so focused on getting small companies, getting entrepreneurship, getting larger companies to come to Gary. And we've seen over $100 million in development in the city of Gary because we understand the need to really be able to develop our way out, to raise the assessed valuation, and ultimately to increase the dollars, the tax dollars that are available. You can cut things, you can reduce costs, but everyone who has ever reviewed our financial situation, from the State Board of Accounts who does our audits every year to professional firms, understand that in order to really be impactful, you have to develop your way out and for sustainable change. And so that's led to our transformative, what I believe is a transformative idea, not just to move the casino out of the Buffington Harbor area, because that's just a small part of that transformation. It's to move it onto land. It's to get a name partner that will make Gary a destination, but it's also, and more importantly, to be able to develop that harbor area into an intermodal inland port.
Wow.
And that's the play.
Yes.
Now, the good news is we were able to move the casino. The Buffington Harbor area is available. The not so good news is I won't be the person to see it to fruition, but I think that we've laid the groundwork. We've created the plan of action, if you will, and it is my prayer that it will be followed through by the next administration.
That's awesome. That is awesome. It sounds like you're going back to Gary's roots of why it's even to be, because Gary was created for industry, right?
Oh,
For
absolutely.
steel. It's back
Absolutely.
to Gary's roots. So it was built to be a town for steel workers, and
it was built by U.S. Steel.
See,
and at the end of the day, we are still the location of the flagship plant. Mm-hmm. Now, at its height, they employed 25,000 people. We currently employ about 4,000. But the reality of that is that, you know, we can still be the flagship for U.S. Steel and utilize our natural resources, our location in proximity to Chicago, the fact that we have 4 interstate highways that run through Gary, the fact that we have 3 Class 1 railroads that are in the city of Gary, and the fact that we are, in fact, in the population center of North America. That speaks to, and we're on one of the largest fresh bodies of water in the world, next to an airport that has great potential, the Gary Airport. So that speaks to intermodal development.
Wow. You are, look, this is the same sort of talks that we're having here in Norfolk, I'll tell you, between the railroad, the harbor.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, it's cities all over. But so what in this, it sounds like you have, like you said, laid this foundation for greater things, set somebody else up for success, because we'll get to why you won't be there. But what brought you to the job? At one point, did you decide, you know what, I'm the woman for this. I'm going to go ahead and put my hat in the ring and let's see what happens.
So I'm going to ask you to press pause for a minute, because I've gotten a couple of calls from the court. This isn't live, right?
Okay. So yes, we're like, why, at what point did you figure out that you're going to put your head in the ring? Because I know I did my homework on you. I could say, here comes the judge. But you've got a lot. Like you've been a servant for quite a bit of time. So talk to me a little about that journey, and then what led you to putting your name and saying, I'm going to get on the ballot for this.
So we talked about how I saw Gary in great times, and then I saw Gary in challenging times. And after graduating from law school, I came right home because I wanted to make a difference. So I worked in the prosecutor's office. I worked in the public defender's office. I worked at the state level. And, but always in the back of my mind was that 7-year-old saying, you're supposed to be mayor, right? And so as I had my professional journey, I was always thinking about being mayor. I ran unsuccessfully in '87 for council, for the 2nd District City Council. And so I thought that was going to be my path to becoming the mayor. And when I was unsuccessful there, at some point later, I became the city judge. And I thought, well, maybe this is my path to becoming the mayor. But then there was a call for me to serve as Indiana Attorney General to finish out someone's term. And so I did that. And then I kept thinking that these are detours from my calling, right? And so I ended up serving as the Chief Executive Officer of the National Association of Drug Court Professionals. So I'm thinking I'm way, way off. But then it occurred to me that in every role, I was seeing the city from a different perspective, but I was also, particularly when I served at the state and federal level, learning about things that could help the city, could assist me in my efforts as mayor. And so in '03, I ran unsuccessfully as mayor. And then in '07, I ran unsuccessfully as mayor. And so, I truly believe that God places you where he wants me to be. And I'm like, well, Lord, maybe that's not where you want me to, maybe this is what I want, right? And so maybe it's not you, but it's me. So I was perfectly okay with not serving as mayor. I mean, it was still a burning, but I was like, you know what? You don't have to tell me more than twice that you don't want to be bothered with me. I don't care how good of a candidate I think I am. And so I had pretty much decided when the 2011 election came around that I would not be a candidate. People were saying, no, this is your time. You need to run. And I'm like, no, you all must have missed the memo in '03 and '07. I'm not running. And these guys showed me a poll that had been taken by someone who really wanted to run, but whose numbers weren't very good. And they said, you absolutely need to run because you are the only person that can beat the incumbent. And so I ran and, of course, was successful in '11, ran for re-election in 15 and was successful. And, we worked hard, from day one, developing a team, developing a plan, implementing that plan, engaging the public, and then ran again in 19 this year and was not successful in the primary. And so, absolutely disappointed at that, but so honored and pleased with the body of work that our team has created.
Yes. So this sounds like running into a lot of walls, like running full on. What do they say when the door closes? Just go ahead and open another one up. You
Yeah.
you don't know
Yeah.
what you're going to get.
That was absolutely it. So, certainly the 03 and 07 losses were hard. So those were closed doors. But I never stopped serving the community. And even when we got in, there were so many issues. There was clearly the budget issue that I talked about earlier, but there were compliance issues with serious folks like the EPA and the Indiana Department of Environmental Management, the Department of Justice, the Department of Housing and Urban Development, the Department of Transportation. It was just about everybody that you could think of who had something to say about Gary not doing what it was supposed to do. And so we had to work on that, but we also had to deliver because, residents elect you and they expect you to do something.
Yeah.
And we had the great fortune of coming into office during President Obama's second term. So it was during an Obama presidency where he was absolutely focused on assisting, on helping communities out like ours, so much so that he created a Strong City, Strong Communities initiative that we were able to take advantage of. And as a result of that, our city we were able to put out the fires that we needed to put out, but we also gained patience from the federal government as we developed a plan to rectify those things that were wrong. But we were also able to do some positive planning to accomplish those things that needed to be accomplished. As an example, there was always this belief that we had a serious vacant and abandoned building problem, particularly with single family housing. And that was a result of our depopulation. At one point, Gary had almost 200,000 people. Today we have 80,000. People just walked away. You will go to a vacant house in Gary and find a full house of furniture, a full house of clothes, of memorabilia, things that people would normally cherish, but you can't work, can't pay for the house. What do? You move to another city and rebuild your life. And what they left was a house that we had to take care of. Either had to tear it down, had to repurpose, had to put it back onto the tax rolls. And so people would say, well, there are 20,000 abandoned properties in Gary. And I'm like, well, that's a lot. And then somebody said, no, they're not that many. They're probably about 12,000. I'm like, that's still a lot. So my thing is, how do you solve a problem if you can't quantify it? So the first thing I did was say to some folks, look, we've got to quantify this issue of vacant and abandoned housing. I'm going to count the houses, and or we need to count the houses. And they looked at me and said, okay, let's assume it's 12,000. That's a lot of counting. Well, we developed a partnership with the University of Chicago. And those students, the Harris School of Public Policy, found a tool that had been developed because Gary isn't the only city that has had a similar problem. Detroit had the problem. Cleveland has the problem. Flint. So many legacy cities have the same problem. They developed this local data survey, and we spent the first year and a half, almost 2 years, actually counting every parcel in the city. Wow. So now at GaryCounts.org, it tells you that we had almost 7,000 vacant and abandoned properties. It tells you that we've demolished about 1,500 of those. And it tells you the plan of action that we would take if we had the opportunity to get funding for the other 4,000 to 5,000.
Wow. You had to work through work
Yeah,
through people's doubts.
there were so many issues like that that we needed to work through. And so what happens when you tear the house down? How do you address the blight? We have a general services department who work hard every day. But the reality is that the optimal size of a general services department for a city of 56 square miles is about 200 people. We have 30 people in our general services
That's
department.
like Public Works. That's like Public
Yeah,
Works.
that's Public
Okay.
Works.
That makes
So
sense.
you have a place that is only a sixth of the size
Mhm.
that you need to address the problem. Now, residents don't want to hear those statistics. They want to hear, how are you going to address this overgrown lot that is next door to me when I'm cutting my grass every week, when I'm taking care of my property every day? And so we came up with this methodology, again, through the help of the University of Chicago students, looking at other cities out of Savannah, Georgia, that said, let's take 5 blocks at a time, get all of the city, essential city services, so board up, demolition, get general services or public works, get all of those and take a 5-block square area and do it for 5 weeks and really do a deep cleaning, because, it's kind of like never really cleaning your house. You got a lot of work to do. And that's what we've been doing for the last 8 years. Now, here's the challenge. It rains every week. So things keep growing, the overgrowth keeps occurring, and you still have those 30 folks who are just working. So we have to be strategic. And that's what we've done in the work with our general services department. But that's also where our civic engagement has come in.
That's
because
awesome.
we have been really focused in getting the public involved in our efforts.
That crucial, right? That's key.
Yeah.
It's
Oh,
getting
yeah.
block by block. It's out, and as I'm listening, it's like you were combating, like you actually got into a position where you were working from behind.
Oh,
And,
absolutely.
and
Absolutely.
if I hear you correctly, and this is something that I think is common among women in your position, is that you're not taking guesses.
No, we
Very
need to
important.
know. Okay, if you have a dollar, you need to know where to best spend that dollar, because you don't get a do-over. And the other thing is the team approach. We
Yeah.
understood that it wasn't just folks who work in City Hall every day. I talked about the University of Chicago. We work very closely with Indiana University as well. We work closely with our state and federal government. Now, we've not had a Democratic governor in 20 years. It couldn't matter to me that we had a Republican governor or Republican supermajority in the House and the Senate at the state level. I needed to figure out how to work with them. I needed to find the common ground. So it just so happens that the Senate Appropriations Chair was also a Harvard graduate. We didn't go to school together. I didn't know him, but we were able to have that common ground that allowed us to work together, and he was extremely helpful to our administration. I sat and talked to others in Republican leadership to let them know I want the same thing for my city that you want for your communities, for your district. So let's figure out how to make this happen. And we're not talking politics, we're talking about service, we're talking about government.
Yes, I'm getting so many nuggets to pull out of what you're saying. Because it's that idea that you are already built to connect dots, right? You're
Sure.
already built. It's in us to put pieces together. And so I'm wondering, in this whole plight of having to have these difficult conversations with not only your constituents, with the people that are working for you, the people that you want to potentially work with, the partnerships you want to build, and then and coming from a place of just really working and choo-choo and to get to where you are, how do you take care of yourself in doing all of this? Because I would imagine coming into this position, there's a lot of angst about the how. There's a lot of pressure about the what you're going to do. So how did you marry those things and still be able to get the job done? What did you do for yourself?
Well, you know, I had a very valuable and critical lesson even before I came into office. And quite frankly, it was one of the reasons that I was not going to run a third time as well. My mother is a six-time stroke survivor. She had her fifth and sixth stroke in '09. She had one in March and she had one in May, actually on Mother's Day in '09. And it totally debilitated her. And when she had this experience, I had to look at the way she lived her life. She was the original junk food junkie. She would exercise in fits and spurts, but she never had a regular fitness routine. And she was always going and doing for everyone else. You know, she was the designated driver for her friends. And I'm not even talking about when they were partying. I'm talking about every day. They went shopping, if they went to the store, she was the person that drove. And she essentially has lived life at 100 miles an hour. And what happens when you do that and when you neglect self-care as she did, you get health challenges like she has. Now, the good news is she's still with us. But what it forced me to do, and you know, it wasn't anything that I had to have my arm twisted to do. I became a caregiver. And so that was certainly my focus in '09 and '10, ramping up to that 2011 election. But in caring for her, I began to and still understand the importance of eating well. I understand the importance of regular fitness routine. Now, I'm not saying that I always do what I'm supposed to do the way that I'm supposed to do it, but I would say that because of her experience, I've not had some of the health challenges that she has. Now, you know, we can all stand to lose 20 or 30 pounds. I know I can, but I just don't have the same challenges that she has. And I also know the importance of prayer and meditation. I know the importance of going to the spa. I know the importance of retail therapy and the importance of saying that, you know, on Sunday afternoons, that's for family. I'm not going to go to an event. I'm not going to do anything that would otherwise take me out, that would otherwise give me a 7-day week. Because, you know, and people say, well, this is going to be a really good program. It's really important. I said, I understand, but how many days a week do you work? I said, I work 6.5 days a week. I'm going to take this last half and do whatever I want to do with it. And so I you know, that's important. Self-care is so important. And what I often remind myself of is that if I don't take care of myself, not only am I no good to my family, but I can't be of any use to the city that I am so committed to serving.
Oh, wow. Look at you. So it sounds like your mother was a great example of kind of
She has been.
what to do, but also
And
what not to do.
Absolutely.
What not to do. And if I hear you correctly, I hear the word boundaries.
Yes, you
Right.
have to set boundaries because people will, you know, they will use you up. And I mean, it's not anything that is, they're not intending to harm you. It doesn't come from a place of harm. It comes from a place of respect and of their belief that only you can do something. And what you can't buy into that. You know, I have to understand that there are probably 10 people who can do what I do. And to the extent that on any given day I'm tired, then I need to let those other 9 folks do it.
I love it. And so, in doing that, you said there are 9 other folks or 10 other folks. What does your team look like, and what key things did you develop or decide were important to you when you developed your team to make your job and make your life and make this role as mayor sustainable?
So I thought it was important in developing a team to get a group of folks who were not constrained by what they thought government could and could not do. I wanted to get a team of people who weren't clock watchers because I knew that we would have to spend significant hours trying to turn the city around. And I also wanted to get a group of folks who understood that even in the most difficult problem solving situation, you have to have fun at it. And so we have fun in what we do. And I wanted people, at least a large group of folks who understood the business, okay, the business of getting things done, who were interchangeable. So I didn't want just a chief legal officer, or chief counsel, or a person in our legal department who was just a good lawyer. They needed to be a problem solver. They needed to know how to manage a budget. They needed to know how to communicate with folks. And so we developed a team that was multi-generational. In fact, I'm one of the oldest folks on my team because we have a lot of young folks. In fact, when our first corporation council started, she was 32. Our public works director, I think, was 34 when she started. When we got in and, we had young business building department managers and folks in many departments who were leading the departments who were under the age of 35. And then we had some seasoned folks. And what I helped them to understand was that everybody's opinion was valued. I am a consensus builder as a leader. And so I'm going to listen to everyone and we're going to make this decision together. And if there's some uncertainty, certainly I will make the final call, but I want to hear everybody's thoughts so that it will be a collective decision.
That's awesome. That's great. And I'm listening to the different roles that you're throwing out there, especially in the arena of local government, that it's not just you as the mayor leading the cities. It's the folks. You mentioned the leader of your department. I'm going to say public works, but I know that's not right.
Yeah.
But you mentioned certain figures that are also essential, and you said she.
Yeah. Well, so, for the first couple of years, they called City Hall the Estrogen Empire. Now, here's the thing. We didn't have like all women. In fact, it was about 50% women. But what it was there were more women in City Hall than they were accustomed to seeing, that men were accustomed to seeing. And in some key roles, corporation counsel, fire chief, there were women leaders. And, at first I thought the Estrogen Empire was, kind of disrespectful. Then I said, you know what? That's a badge of honor. I'm going to wear it that way.
Yes, I'll tell you. It's so funny you said that because I'm getting ready next week. I do articles for Forbes and I'm writing one on the day after equal pay. And one of the statements the girl put in there, asterisk, she's like, "This is true." The editor, I said, there's this cultural bias. Oh, sorry.
Let's see. What did I do? I pushed the wrong. Oh, there we go. All right.
There's this bias that, when women come into the game, that it's really true that males tend to think when there's when the playing field has more non-white, non-male key figures on there, they think that that's an advantage, not necessarily us leveling, giving people equal. So there's some real threat. Some people see that as a real threat, but if I heard all the things that you said, no matter what that makeup of that team was, you guys have done some very significant things.
Oh, we got the work done. We got the work done. And they soon understood how much I valued men and understood that I value all people to the table. And the other thing was getting as much youth input as we could.
Love it.
And we were successful in getting, folks in high school to buy in. A lot of the work for the local data survey was done by high school and college students taking time out on Saturdays to go in and count the parcels on their cell phones.
Wow.
So that was significant to us.
Hey, you are preaching to the choir. I need people to understand that too. Because listen, my assistant campaign manager was a middle schooler that put in work.
See?
They're just phenomenal. They're phenomenal. It's you mentioned something very important. It's a matter of you're trying to do a job. You're trying to hold in your hands the wisdom of the folks who have done it, but also the unfiltered view of the ones who could soon be doing it, and mirroring that to really make some beautiful decisions. So if I'm looking at this big picture of you, Mayor Freeman-Wilson, what is it that you would think in this seat, this particular seat, what is your most prized or most valued accomplishment? And then couple that with what do you think, or what would you like your legacy to be coming out of that, out of being the mayor?
I think, I've been asked this question a number of times and have answered it differently previously, but I've been thinking a lot about it lately. And I think it's really to get citizens involved in government. There was a lot of apathy. There was a lot of hopelessness. And I think, quite frankly, the lesson of my defeat was that early on, we were able to get some big wins and low-hanging fruit, and people didn't necessarily understand the progress and the process of the progress because they were more engaged. And so to the extent that they got more engaged, that caused them to say, well, this isn't happening quickly enough. But I think that's a good thing, that they are engaged, that they have played a role in our comprehensive plan update, that they've played a role in utilizing 311, starting block clubs. And, that really is my legacy, to not only get citizens engaged, but to raise their expectation about how government should deliver for them.
And some people don't even realize they have that power, right? And it sounds like
Yeah.
you put a Spock in there. With that, people getting and falling in love with the government and the local and the possibilities of what they create. Tell me a little bit more about this hashtag Love My City that you had going on.
So, this is really my effort and our collective effort at the National League of Cities to get people to not only care more about their cities, but care more about each other. It's the recognition that there has been so much negative discourse that has occurred among government in front of voters, and it has really caused people to look at government in a negative way. And so, the elected officials that I interact with the most at the local level are doing it because they have a genuine love and care, not just for the city, but for the people that they represent. But people don't always know that, because what do they see on TV? They see folks going at it at the federal level. They hear of people going at it at the state level. And so what I wanted to get city leaders to do is to say to folks, hey, you know what? We're doing this because we love Gary. We love Cincinnati. We love so many other, we love Hopewell, Virginia. We love Richmond. We love Norfolk. And in doing that, we want you to love this community too. So here are some ways that you can get engaged, because here are the things that we want to develop for you. We want to have a city that serves every generation. We want to have a city that recognizes the importance of housing. We want to have a city that recognizes that there are some cities, like legacy cities, that have been challenged. And we want to have a city where citizens are civically engaged, because guess what? The census is coming up next year, but there are some other important things that are coming up that we want you to be engaged in. And that is, quite frankly, what Love My City is all about. And you know what? It has caught fire. One of the most exciting things for me is when I travel to stop in an airport and see the Love My City billboard go up, the electronic billboard, or to go to Times Square like we did and to see it in the Times Square area and to take a picture in front of it. And so, and to have my colleagues from all over. We have a city leader, I believe from Ashton, Virginia, who sent me a tie-dyed Love My City shirt, Sean Polster. And that was so encouraging to me. And those are the things that I think are lasting for citizens, and that last a lifetime, quite frankly, for city leaders as well.
Awesome. Yes. So it sounds like you want people to just love where they live and be a part of where they live, be a part of it.
Absolutely.
So talk about things lasting. Let's talk about things that you don't want to last. If there was one thing that you could say, I just need a do-over on this moment in my tenure, or I learned the biggest lesson, or if I just, like this is a lesson I learned or whatever, what would that moment be? Or what would that situation or policy, what would that be?
So my do-over is very personal. We had a hard-fought election, and I thought that I needed to spend every hour campaigning. My grandson, who was a junior, he's a senior this year, but he was a junior last year, had a botillion, and I missed it because I thought I needed to be in a debate. Well, you see, it didn't matter that much, and I should have been at that family event. And so I always understand and value the importance of family, but sometimes you can get caught in the heat of the moment and make the wrong decision. And that decision was just wrong. And so now I'm organizing a time for our entire family. And there are about 17 of us, counting adults and children, immediate family, to come together in December. And that is going to be so rich. But, you can be engaged and really value the work that you do, but nothing should ever come above family.
Oh my goodness. So tell me, what is a botillion?
A botillion is the male version of a culture.
Got it. That's what I was thinking. But I was I don't know. Let's just ask. I think that speaks very, very clearly to who you are and what you value, right? Yeah. Those irreplaceable folks that will forgive you when you've done them the most wrong, don't have much expectations from you but your love.
Because he was like, oh no, don't worry, we'll send video, we'll send pictures, but that haunts me.
Really? Well, I am hoping that in December y'all have a good old time and y'all listen to some of that man in the back, Luther Vandross.
That's it.
So I'm going to get ready to wrap it up with you, but I'm leaving this space because I got about 15 more minutes of your time. Again, what I really want to come across in this process is you. So is there anything that we didn't talk about that you would love for people to hear? Because this is the podcast will broadcast all over the world. So anything that maybe we missed that you feel is like important to your story, or that you just want to bring awareness to, and it's like your time to put something on the table, because I'll edit it and move it around so that there's a flow to what you're saying. This is your opportunity to say whatever it is that you want.
So there are two things that I want to talk about. The first is how important your work is and what you're doing to highlight the role of women mayors, women leaders, the fact that we exist. I want to encourage younger women to think about leading. Commend you on your school board race, and don't give up. I mean, in my journey, I lost 4, 5 elections because I lost my reelection as AG. So I've lost 5 elections. I've won, I think, 4. So I've lost more than I've won, but I would not do anything differently in terms of running, even knowing that I might lose an election. And so I would encourage young women to run. So often we don't offer ourselves. We are certainly as talented and in many instances more talented than our male counterparts. But we just, we go around thinking, who, me? And modesty and humility are certainly important, but you also need to understand how much folks need your voice and your service. So that's the first thing that I would say. The second thing is that we have a blended family, right? So I have a younger daughter, our youngest that I gave birth to, and we have older children. I have a 40-year-old daughter. I have a 55-year-old daughter. She just turned 55, and I have a 57-year-old son. And we are proud of each and every one of our children and their grandchildren. I have to give a special shout out to my youngest daughter because I think she is the one who is most likely to follow in my footsteps, although our second daughter is probably more like me than any of them. She is currently in law school at Boston College. She is also the co-developer of a political app called Politicking, Politicking. Her name is Jordan Wilson. She and Winkuni Siant have developed this because they want to get more millennials and more people in general civically engaged. And I would just invite folks to take a look at Politicking, the app. It is nonpartisan. We don't care who you vote for. We don't care who you engage with, but we need people to be civically engaged at every level of government because government is absolutely for the people. And sometimes people become disillusioned because they think that political office holders, those who work in government, are self-serving. And sometimes, quite frankly, we are. But at the end of the day, government is for the people. And the only way to ensure that is if you allow your voice to be heard. And maybe you don't have time to go to a meeting at the council chambers or at City Hall. Maybe you don't have time to participate in a community meeting. But because of social media, because of apps, and because of other forms of engagement, it's so easy for you to be involved. And I would just encourage folks to be involved whenever it's possible.
Yeah, that couldn't be more perfect from the mission that we're trying to get done here. I appreciate you. So in this last little bit, and I'll reach out to Jordan because I've got something called the Black Girl Experience, and it's chocolate girls just doing good things. So maybe I can have her on. So your next step, you mentioned that you will no longer be the mayor of Gary, Indiana. Talk to us about what you're transitioning to and what that means to you and what you hope to accomplish.
Well, I have been appointed as the Chief Executive Officer of the Chicago Urban League. And I am absolutely looking forward to working with a dynamic group of individuals in an organization that has been in existence in the city of Chicago for over 100 years, where it's another opportunity to serve. So I'm looking forward to it. I think that it will be an awesome opportunity, and I just can't wait.
I can't wait for you. It has been a blessing just to have you just be, I know, look, you got a million things going on. I think it's wonderfully perfect that you had to stop to take a phone call. That just speaks to there's always something. A city doesn't sleep. And I'm grateful to the 6.5 days that you work towards making your city a better place. And I hope you remain that wide-eyed girl, the wide-eyed 7-year-old, leading still. So you're still going to be living in Gary? Are you currently residing in Gary?
Well, I am living in Gary, and I'll be having a place in Chicago, but I'm still going to be a part of the fabric of both communities. But there's no question that I'm going to be focused on my current role and acclimating myself to a new environment.
Well, I am very excited for the people that get to have your energy around them. I'm sure the Urban League knows that they're getting a gift. Again, it's been a blessing. I'm grateful for your spirit, right? I heard you mention my friend calls it PMJ, prayer, meditation, and journaling. She said, you eat your PMJ today, girl, because you're a little off. So that,
you have to have it. You have to have it. And, my faith has played such an instrumental role in my life. With the ups and the downs, you know who to give the glory to, and it's nothing that I've done, and I'm not that great, but God has blessed me immensely, and I think that we're all blessed to be a blessing.
Yeah, and I'm gonna disagree with you about I'm not that great. Okay, I had what you talking about, Willis? What you talking about? I was like, what you talking about, man? You are great.
I appreciate it.
Got that. Look, no one is entitled to your time. Building partnerships are important. Having your faith and being grounded and believing in your city is important. We are so grateful to have had you. We wish you all the best in your next venture.
And many thanks for all the work that you do, Jackie. And like I said, keep running, girl. Keep running.
I don't know.
Yeah,
I'm loving community activism. I love it. I'm actually infatuated with it. But what I will say is, this podcast won't launch until October, probably the first or second week of October. We'll be getting episodes edited. But as soon as your episode airs, I'll go ahead and send a link. So that you can listen to it. And actually, as soon as I get it edited and ready to go, I'll send it to you before it actually goes live, so you can kind of hear what we've taken from this conversation and compiled to make hopefully a very inspirational and aspirational conversation for women across the globe.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
And you make it a great day. And here's a big hug.
All right. All right.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
A woman is free if she lives by her own standards and creates her own destiny, if she prizes her individuality and puts no boundaries on her hopes for tomorrow.